Morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 00 of Foxhound's Kennel Podcast. I am Foxhound. My real name is Matt. I'm a member of a full contact stick fighting organization known as the Dog Brothers. If you are in Filipino martial arts already, you might have heard of us. Um, we get around a little bit, but basically, this is going to be my vehicle to try and help spread martial arts and awareness of martial arts and the people who live a martial arts lifestyle and what the rest of their life kind of is. So I'm going to split the podcast into two sort of sections. I'm going to have my interview series in which I'm going to do sort of long form, as hands off as possible interviews with martial artists from different walks of life who for whom the martial arts is a part of their lifestyle, whether they're a teacher or a, a cop or in the military or something like that, or whether they're just a cook like myself, or maybe they work in an office with computers or something like that. But sort of the blending of martial arts and their regular life. And then the other part of this podcast series will be shorter. I'm going to call those my rabid ramblings. I'm going to talk about gear, whether it's stick fighting related gear or martial arts gear, gloves, shin pads, things like that. Anything new I've got on my plate, or possibly drills, things like that have come to my attention that I think are really cool that other people might want to get involved in. I'm also going to review some books, talk about some different topics that I find are cool and interesting because it's my fucking podcast and that's what I want to do. So there. I'm going to avoid modern politics. I'm going to avoid smearing, other styles, particularly people. Personally, that's something that there's plenty of available online. If you want to talk about modern politics or shit on other people, that's easy. You can go out and find that other places. Not even going to say that I don't always avoid engaging in it, but we're just not going to do it here. Uh, anyway, just kind of a brief rundown on me martial arts wise. I began training martial arts as a kid doing karate. I did that for a few years. I was a little ADHD kid, so the idea of learning all the katas and the Japanese counting and everything else seemed good on the surface, but it was not that easy. And then, as a lot of adolescent boys do, I lost that to girls and team sports. I played ice hockey and lacrosse for a long time. Got into rugby later on, but then in my real early 20s, I had begun to look into some knife-based combatives. I was living in Annapolis, Maryland at the time, and working in a restaurant. And where I was working, there had been several kind of strong arm robberies, people being jumped for tip money and stuff like that if it was clear they worked in a restaurant. So I began carrying a knife with the idea of it being for self-defense. I grew up in a pretty woodsy spot in northern Massachusetts, and then I had a couple-year period where I worked on a hunt, so I carried a knife up to that point, but I started thinking about carrying one specifically for self-defense. And then just coincidentally, I happened to be involved in a stabbing incident. One of my coworkers stabbed one of my other coworkers who I was a bit more friendly with, and that basically got me started with the idea of learning sort of more reality-based martial arts. And this would have been probably maybe 2006. So the internet was not as robust as it is now, and there was not as much access even to the information of where to find people to train in the way that you wanted to train. So I just started kind of poking around the edges of Filipino martial arts world, what I could get a hold of. What I encountered in the couple of small schools that I dropped in on was not what I was looking for. So I was a little bit of a lost puppy on that, just kind of emulating knife drills that I could find. And then I also got my National Registry EMT because right from the beginning of re-entering martial arts in my 20s, I realized that fighting and doing damage is a two-sided coin, and that if you're going to learn to fight and do damage, you should also try and learn to help as well. In the modern era, that's really taken off. People putting emphasis on trauma care and things like that, especially in the armed combatives world. Everybody's got a tourniquet now. Everybody has an idea of what to do with a chest seal. Well, everybody has an idea. Everybody's heard of these things. You wouldn't want most of these tactical idiots pulling out their fucking brand new IFAK and trying to decompress your chest with a needle they've never even taken out. But I digress. Yeah, so I got my National Registry MT, started messing around with knives, what I could, bought a couple of videos, and then like 2008 or so, 2009, a couple of Dog Brother highlight clips hit YouTube, and I saw one, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, because I'd sort of been poking around HEMA longsword. Again, at that time, there wasn't a lot out there, and what was available was kind of pear-shaped men with balding ponytails and lace-up shirts, and I just wasn't that interested. And Battle of the Nations seemed like bumper cars for rich guys that don't mind extra head trauma. Just I look at that type of combat as ahistorical, and it's all well and good if you're looking for just building your CTE up a little bit. But anyway, when I looked around, that stuff wasn't available in my area anyway. But what I found was the Dog Brothers, and I thought it was cool. And I found, oh, it's this Filipino martial arts stuff I've been doing with the short knife anyway. And then there was this ill-fated family cookout where one of my cousins and I had pulled out a pair of padded sticks after a couple of Sam Adams, and we just went at it, in the yard, as we've been doing since we were teenagers. Anytime we had a couple of drinks, our testosterone poisoning levels rose through the roof, and we'd get after it. But one of my friends recorded it on his cell phone, and he posted it on maybe Facebook or something, and it put the words Dog Brothers in there, tagged it, or like training for Dog Brothers or something, when we were clearly drunk in the yard just fighting. And someone took exception to that, a gentleman who shall remain nameless, and he went out of his way to send me a couple of private messages that were pretty mean. And you know me, my attitude is much more you can go fuck yourself than I'm sorry. So I was like, all right, buddy, what's up? And he basically told me I was a disgrace, XYZ. So I said, all right, dude, where can I fight you? And he goes, well, that's cool. You can find me at the Dog Brothers gathering in September in California. I said, all right, motherfucker, I will see you there. So a few months later, I flew out to California, no idea what I was doing, with a brand new fencing mask that I don't think I'd even put on my face yet, and some sticks that had never made contact with another human before. And the rest was history. I met the Toro Clan guys. I'm rocking the shirt here. Renee and Tyler. Saw Growling Dog and Dirty Dog, as well as Wandering Dog, and a couple other guys the night before the fights. They took me under wing, realizing that I was an idiot with much more balls than common sense in that moment. And yeah, things took off from there. They made sure that I got myself a real teacher. I started training Pakiti Tershakali under Green Mountain Dog, who is Pat Gagnon. And then from there, I when he moved back up to Vermont, I started training Dog Brother martial arts under a guy named Joe Dix, who is he's a rarity because he's one of the few Dog Brother martial arts instructors who's not also a gathering fighter, but he specialized in some of the non-stick aspects on top of some of the stick stuff. He was an expert in Die Less Often, as well as Kali Tudo, which are crafty dogs, empty hand cage fighting style, as well as his self-defense style. But yeah, I worked with Joe for a few years, and then couple years ago, I began teaching for myself, and I don't know, kind of the rest is history. I've wound up here. At this point, due to the COVID lockdown and my having moved across the country about 4 weeks before that started, I'm mostly just teaching virtual classes right now. I do have one in-person student, but basically, yeah, that's sort of the rundown on who I am and what I'm doing here, and what I intend to do with this podcast. And I really hope that people enjoy it. Please bear with me. I'm not an expert in the audiovisual technical field, so if I make mistakes on stuff, or as my video editing skills, I would like to say grow, but they don't exist. So hopefully we can sprout them a little bit or something. But yeah, hang in there with me. Hopefully we have a good time. I've got a couple of really, really cool people lined up for you. And sometime in the next hour or so, my crafty interview will drop, and we'll take the show on the road. All right, guys. Woof, woof. Thank you for coming. Later.